Alright, so in this chapter we're gonna start setting up a variety of projects that I've prepared for you. Even if a particular effect doesn't interest you, I still recommend that you stick around and watch the video because it's more about the techniques and the tips and tricks and workflows that I will be sharing as I set up these effects from scratch. So it's more about learning rather than trying to replicate exactly what I'm doing, even though I did try to make these as cool as I could so you can use them in your portfolio or in your reel. So first we need to go over importing geometry. So we've already touched on the import node. So if I just create a new import node, here you can import your geometry. It can be an FBX, Alembic, or an OBJ. I will be using FBX mostly throughout the course. That's the one that has worked for me the best. So to get an animated character, we will be using Mixamo, but you can use anything else you would like. The way Mixamo works, if you've never used it before, first you can click on the characters tab and pick a character that you like. I will be using this Erica Archer, and then you can go into animations, and I will just search for spell because we need some sort of a magical spell, and I'll grab this standing 1H spell 01. So I just want to slow the animation down, so I'll just lower this overdrive value all the way to 0. This is kind of like retiming. It will just slow down the entire animation for us. And you can just click on download, leave everything as it is, and download. So I just made a new folder called FBX, and I'll just rename this spell upwards. I will just import my spell upwards FBX. It's gonna say processing. It may take a second, but it should show up in here. It may seem almost invisible if your ground is gray like mine, but the character is here. So let's change the color so we can see it better. So you can just scroll down to rendering and change the albedo color all the way to pure white. Now it's in the default T-pose, but we need the animation. So here under animations, make sure animate is checked. It is by default, and set the animation to Mixamo. So now if I hit spacebar to start my simulation, here is my animation of the character. So this works just like any other geometry in Embergen. You can of course move it, rotate it, scale it. You have this scale option here so you can easily scale it up or down. By default, the animation will loop, so you can uncheck that and it will only play the animation once and then stop. And here is this blue bar in our timeline that shows you the length of the animation. So I will enable looping again, start it again. So if the animation is too fast or too slow for you, you can check override FPS. So by default it's set to 60. So you can see how the animation sped up. So the default is 30. That's what we exported it as from Mixamo. But if it still feels too fast, you can just keep lowering this FPS until you get a very slow motion animation like this. So maybe I'll set it to 15. You can also delay the animation so that it starts a little bit longer. So if you pay attention to the timeline, I'm just moving the starting point of the animation over. So the rendering tab, we already changed the color. You can enable volumetric shading, which basically lets the 3D model be affected by Embergen lights. So if I just make a new point light, let's say, and some of that light is going through the geometry, you can see there's some scattering going through the model. And you can control how much light is passing through the model with the lightning bias. So the higher this is, the more opaque the model appears. And the lower this value, the more light is allowed through the model. Next, we have these masks. So we're gonna use this to emit smoke and fire out of only selected parts of the model, which we're gonna paint with vertex colors. So for example, we could paint just the hands red and then select vertex color red, and the fire or particles will only be coming out of the hands. This is covered in a later example in the course. So you have multiple masks here for all of the different vertex colors. You have red, green, blue, and alpha. That's why you have 4 different masks over here. So I'll turn off the volumetric shading and get rid of this point light I made. And we will continue with this setup in the next video.